Before I turned 50, I could barely turn my head. What Top Fit Pros has done for me is to allow me to work out hard, to take care of the sore muscles, to actually work those knots out myself.
TopFitPros.com.
Can tight muscles really hurt you? Yes! We don't talk enough about how tight muscles can hurt you. When somebody gets hurt, typically they remember that moment. I know I have. I've remembered the moment I got hurt, that tearing, that injury, that bruising under the skin, the blood from a torn muscle, that kind of stuff sticks with you. You look at the big bruise and so on, you remember that moment when that tissue was really stressed and it tore and it hurt. And then the swelling happened afterwards and the bruising and so on. So all that is part of your memory. It's part of my memory. But what we're not remembering and not really perceiving is what led up to that injury. What caused the injury in the first place was not just that moment when the tissues were overloaded, but all of the behavior that we did leading up to that moment that caused our tissues to be chronically shortened and super tight so that they were just ready to tear when a very acute stress was put on them. Where if they had been loosened properly, if they had been taken care of to have proper range of motion, then they wouldn't have torn in that circumstance. Sure, there are some injuries that no matter how loose you had your muscles, that you'd tear, but most of the time, the large majority of the time, we have dysfunctional movement and we have tight muscles that set us up for injury. And then we remember the moment of injury, but we totally discount what led up to it. And the real problem with that is, even though we may rehab the injury, we may not take into account the chronically shortened muscles that started that process in the first place. And if we don't take that into account and we go through a recovery process and a healing, and then we go out again and we put those stresses on those muscles and they're still tight, then we probably get re-injured. So it's really important, both in terms of prevention of the initial injury and in terms of rehab so that you don't re-injure it downstream, that you take into account those tight muscles. A lot of people have had knee replacement surgeries and have super tight quadricep muscles that have been putting pressure on that knee joint for a long, long time. And they get through rehab, and I'll see somebody come to me, and they still have super tight quadricep muscles. And if something's not done about that, then they're likely to get hurt again. But even more to the point, if somebody has a torn ACL or meniscus and they have a repair, but they don't take into account the tight muscles that led to it, that have been putting undue pressure in that knee joint, then they're probably going to be destined to have it happen again. So you really want to look at your muscles, at what is tight, and take care of it. The other thing that happens is when you have a chronically shortened muscle, then it sends a signal that it's working all the time. So it sends a signal to the brain and says, I'm partly contracted here. And when you do that, when that muscle is doing that, it's involuntary. You don't have any control over it. It's sending a signal to your brain or up into the spine. And it creates an inhibitory signal coming from the brain to the opposing muscle. So for example, a lot of people have tight, deep hip flexors, like the psoas muscle, the deep hip flexor in the hips, the front of the groin, in the groin. And that muscle, when it's tight, it's short. It's short because they've been sitting so much usually. So people who are sitting at a desk all day long, when they stand up, or it causes pressure in their backs. Or when they're sleeping at night, curled up on the side in a ball, it's short, and then they try to stand up in the morning and the back hurts, that kind of thing. So, but not only does it cause back pain, but it also inhibits the glutes, so your rear end muscles that give you a nice shape back there and give you power for standing up and jumping and running and so on, they're inhibited. So you're not as strong as you should be. And that comes from the overactive deep hip flexors in many cases. So in order for our bodies to function properly, we need to address the tight muscles that we have in the body. And that goes to injury avoidance, and it goes to functional movement, and it goes to addressing pain issues. All of those things. All of those results come from super tight muscles. So make sure you figure out what muscles are tight and address those so that your body can attain the strength and functionality that you want it to have. I'll see you the next time.
TopFitPros.com